Hey, I'm Nick, and in this video, you're going to hear from Mallory Wright, Kids Director at Mosaic Church, all about how they use YouTube for their children's ministry and how they've done that even church-wide. They're probably the only church I knew of that when COVID-19 hit and they moved their children's ministry content online, they were having as much engagement with their children's ministry content as they were in person in attendance. And that was not true for any other church that I talked to. Now, Mallory's a friend and a local children's ministry leader. Her church and my church are only about 30 minutes apart. And I love what they're doing at Mosaic Church and with Mosaic Kids. So you're going to learn about what they did to put their children's ministry content on YouTube, some of the recording things that they did, how they got volunteers involved, what that looked like behind the scenes. I'll share my screen and even show you what their YouTube channel looks like. So you're going to see all that and more in this video. Now, this video is bonus content related to a course called the New Digital Church. That course is designed to help church leaders leverage online strategies and tactics to reach and disciple more people. If you're interested in that, check out newdigitalchurch.com. If you want to see more free video interviews like this one, go ahead and hit subscribe so you don't miss any of those. And if this is helpful to you, go ahead and hit that like button. All right, I'm Nick Blevins, and I'm here with our guest, Mallory Wright. Welcome, Mallory.
Hi, Nick.
So tell us about you and Mosaic Christian Church as we get rolling.
Yeah, so my name is Mallory Wright. I'm the kids director at Mosaic. We are a church in Maryland. We're probably 20 minutes outside of Baltimore. We're in a suburb called Elk Ridge. And we are a church for people who don't go to church. So we get a lot of new believers in our church.
Yep, you do. That's awesome. And of course, we're like in a network together of churches that started, except ours is much older, not much older, but a little bit older. And on a different side of Baltimore. So we're both suburbs there. But we're going to talk about what you're doing with kids content online, because you're one of the only churches, if not the only church when I'm recording this, that has seemed to do a great job connecting with parents and having them like lead their kids or at least watch this content online, you know, similar to like what you had pre-COVID when things shut down. Mm-hmm. And that's not the case for most churches. You know, most churches are having a hard time, I think, in my experience, with, you know, the kids content that they're putting online and parents engaging with it, making that part of their regular week and all that. So we're going to show some clips. Like I'll share my screen and show your all's YouTube channel and some of your videos while you're talking. So don't let me interrupt you too much. But I'd love to just start with, give us just a picture of what Mosaic Kids was like before, like when you were meeting in person, before COVID hit, maybe the size of it, typical program real quick. Tell us about that.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I want to start off by saying we have no idea what we're doing. So I feel like in some ways it's like luck and we have really good bought-in family. So I think that that's been really helpful for us. But just to give you an idea, so pre-COVID, our average attendance between preschool and elementary was 354 kids. And so our breakdown was we had about 55% of that is elementary, which for us is K to 5th grade. And then 45% is 6 weeks through rising kindergartner. So kids that are 5 but miss the kindergarten cutoff. Yep. So almost that was even. Our average.
Yeah, almost 50-50 split.
Almost 50
elementary
split. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then we are an Orange church, so we use all of Orange's curriculum. And so we have been, just to kind of give you a little bit more context too, about a year ago, maybe 18 months ago, we moved into a new building. So the elementary environment is like one big giant space for our elementary kids. And then for preschool, it's divided up between 8 rooms. So that's just kind of like a breakdown of what our church looks like.
Yeah. And then when COVID hit and you couldn't meet in person, you kind of shifted and pivoted like every church online, but you've done some cool things with your kids content where you're not just sharing what you're getting from Orange, you're kind of adding to it, doing some of your own hosting and some things like that. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing, what that process looks like behind the scenes to kind of get that ready. And while you're doing that, I'll probably start sharing the screen and we'll look at your channel.
Okay, great. So for us early on, we had to pivot very quickly. One really great thing was our pastor immediately was like, hey, we need to do something for families. So for us, we took it as an opportunity because we knew, hey, this is going to reach families in a way that we've never been able to reach families before. Because most of us, most parents don't get to see what we do on a Sunday morning. So we took this as an opportunity like, hey, let's go all in. Let's give them a sample of what they see on Sunday morning. So I think for a lot of families, especially for our families, because again, a lot of them are new believers, I think this has been a really cool opportunity for them to be able to see like, oh, that's who Ollie is, this owl that my kid talks about. Or they get to see John and Brandon and Kellen on the so-and-so show. So we do take part of what Orange gives us. The Bible story, we always use their videos. But when it comes to like the large group host portion of it, we do take what Orange gives us for curriculum, but then we modify it to make it our own. So we have three or four volunteers that help us every week to create a preschool video and an elementary video. And right now our elementary video averages about a half hour long, with probably 15 minutes of that being the so-and-so show. And then for preschool, those videos are about 15 minutes long with 5 or 6 minutes of it being Ollie. So it's 50%, 50-ish percent Orange, and then the other 50% is just our creativity from our volunteers.
Yeah. And we just showed, what I was just showing there was one of your preschool videos. So you had like that custom intro, and then you had clearly done stuff with some volunteers because there was some mixed in footage there. And then you came back and kind of wrapped it up at the end again. Now we're looking at March 16th. Now it's been up a long time. And look at this, 565 views, which that was obviously like I think the other preschool we just looked at had 160 some, and here's 223 for your elementary. So these numbers, just again, they're just views. It's hard to compare that to actual in-person attendance, but they're close to what you got in person, which again, I would say is not common. And here we got Kevin and Brandon, 2 volunteers, right, from Mosaic Kids. Yep. And so you shot this in your building, right, in a room that you've set up. Is that right? Look, you're telling people to subscribe. Smart move. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that we've done was we transformed one of our kids' rooms because we knew like, hey, we don't know how long COVID is going to last. So we said, hey, let's make an investment in one of these rooms. And what we've done is we've turned it into a kids' studio. And so now that studio is where we film all of our videos every week. And it's one room for both preschool and elementary. And one of the cool things that you can see on this video later on is this is also how we've continued to engage some of our small group leaders. So obviously I went from a core volunteer team of 200 to only needing like maybe 10, 12 people start to finish in our process to put out a broadcast. So I also had to figure out, okay, how do I continue to engage families during this time? And our small group leaders this time. So I'll reach out to them occasionally and say, hey, can you film a portion of the video? Like we'll engage them using games or
like this right here. You got people that were part of a competition, right?
Yeah. So that was the Focus Olympics that we did for this summer. And so that's something that we've done all summer long.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah, it's something fun and engaging. The same thing with our worship videos. We filmed in a space within our church. And these are songs, that are just popular in Christian culture today.
And my one thing I would add too is when I've seen these worship videos that you do, you know, sometimes the worship videos you get, they're more moves, they're more complicated. It seems like you kind of like slim that down a little bit, make the moves a little easier. You're putting the lyrics on the screen, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We try to make it to where an adult and a kid could do this. So we try not to overcomplicate our worship moves.
Sure. I bet many of them appreciate that. So there's a lot of content here, even before we got into the video. of your team, your worship. And then now we're looking at an orange video that just comes with the curriculum. You put that in there, and then I'm guessing you come back at the end, just like in the preschool one, and kind of wrap it up with your team.
Yeah, and something that we learned from Orange early on was one thing that they pushed was, having the parent be the small group leader. And so we were like, how do we do that? Because one thing we have not done is had small groups on Sunday morning. So I know that that's something that some churches have done where they, have their small group meet.
On Zoom or something like that. Yeah,
on Zoom. So we have not done that, but we still said, hey, how can we make that happen? So if you scrub to the end of the video, we actually have discussion questions that we ask parents to go through every week. And so for us, one of the things we figured out early on was because we're a church for people who don't go to church, a lot of families are new believers. So a lot of parents are like learning the Bible for themselves right now and trying to figure all of that out. So what we did was we actually give them sample answers. So we're trying to set them up for success. So like if they're asking the question, if Peter hadn't gone to Cornelius's house and shared with Jesus, like we're giving them a sample of like, hey parents, this is what your answer can be if you're trying to create a discussion for your kids.
Yeah, and you're putting them in here too. It's not just you're giving answers to parents that kids don't see. You're building it into the video so they can both read it together.
Right.
That's great. And you've done some other supplemental videos. Don't you re-release some things midweek? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so some of the things that we've done is midweek we release the Bible story from Orange. So we re-release Ollie. We re-release the Bible story from the previous Sunday. So it's just another way that we can engage parents. But the other thing that we've done is for the clips that we have put together, we will actually repost those just so that parents and kids can see just those little things that we've done. So for example, the Orioles are terrible. Let's just go on record. The Orioles They're not great. We're hoping that they can turn it around, but they're not great. But baseball's big around here. And so this past weekend, what we did was we filmed our own hot dog race, which is really popular. If you go to baseball games, it's on the screen, all of that. So what we did was we took a snippet of that hot dog race video. And we know right now that there's like a choose your character fad that's happening on Instagram. So we took that little snippet of the hot dog race, we put it on Instagram, and the way that we engaged families before Sunday morning was like, hey, pick the condiment that you want to win. So do you want ketchup, mustard, or relish to win? And then we say, hey, tune in on Sunday morning so that you can see who won the hot dog race. So we try to take whatever we're putting out on social media and tie it into the broadcast so that we're all communicating the same message every single week.
Yeah, that's great. Walk us through a little bit of like the behind the scenes, because I think some people watch that and think, oh, my church could never do that. But you're leveraging volunteers. You are rewriting scripts. You're actually contracting out the filming and the editing, which is one of the biggest hurdles of the whole thing, right? So tell us what like a typical, week looks like. I think you film 2 weeks at a time. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I have to film around volunteer schedules. So which means my schedule has to be a little bit more flexible because most of the time we're filming like late afternoon, early evening. Yeah. So what we did was we said, hey, we want some really engaging people. So we took some of our best large group leaders and said, hey, we want you to be the one to like champion these videos to start off. So we have a script editing team, and they just take those scripts from Orange. They spend probably at least 30 to 45 minutes kind of restructuring all those scripts. So it's probably 30 or 45 minutes each script. And then what we do is I review those scripts just to make sure that everything is good and it's in line with our vision as a church. So I review those. And then we schedule filming. And Nick said that we have a contractor that comes in. He was already somebody that went to our church, but we just happened to find out like, oh, he has like a film degree. We're going to leverage that. Yeah, that's handy to have, right? But the cool thing is, I think that I would encourage other kids directors out there, like look for people in your church that have this particular skill set. So one of the videos that we filmed in our main service was just this like fun video that we did early on in COVID of our pastor, our lead pastor, and our associate pastor and our creative arts director riding scooters around our building, and they were basically racing each other, like socially distanced, safe, all that. But it was actually a 6th grader who filmed and edited that video, and that video's got more views than like any other video that we've done. So all that to say, I would encourage you, find those people in your church, even if they're students, like give them an at-bat and just see what they're able to do. So we have somebody, we come in, we film. Filming takes probably an hour and a half to 2 hours to film, 2 weeks worth of content. But they're prepared before they come in. They know what they're saying. One thing that I would encourage you, and you can do this with an iPad. I know tons of churches have iPads because of registration or kids check-in. We've turned that into a teleprompter. So there's not a ton of memorization on their part. Like they're literally reading from a teleprompter every week. So that was a huge it wasn't a huge investment, but it was a huge like return on investment because we already had these iPads available. Let's put them to good use. And then it probably takes our editor, I would say, anywhere from an hour to 2 hours, maybe 3 max, to edit those videos. So for us, we turn them around pretty quickly. So like if we record, like tonight we will record for preschool, and he could have that video ready by Thursday or Friday for final like upload to YouTube.
Cool. And I know there's some teleprompters you get that work with the iPad. Do you have like one and they're both reading off it? Did you get 2? And the cost isn't that prohibitive now?
No. So we only have one iPad. So they both read off of the same iPad. So there's just like notes that say Brandon on it or say Kevin on it. And so they just know when to read their part. But yeah, we only have one.
And we were talking about the costs. Even for someone that you're hiring, some of the costs you've found is like $100 to $150 a video, which I felt like was pretty good. Yeah. Now, obviously, some churches may not be in a position to do that for their kids' content, and engaging other student volunteers, like you said, could be the way to go. For sure, that's some great ideas. Is there the other thing is I think about, you have had your videos on one YouTube channel for the whole church, but you're talking about maybe moving that, right? But you're like early on in that process.
Yeah, so we are in talks of doing that. One of the main things that we came back to was, so for our church in particular, we're a younger church. And we were finding that our kids' videos were basically saturating our YouTube channel because we're putting out multiple videos during the week where the main service is putting out the adult service. Like that is what they're putting out. So for every one video, there were like 4 kids videos. And so just learning from other churches that are bigger than us and know way more about kids ministry than us, a lot of them have their own YouTube page. So right now what we're doing is cross posting. So it's on the kids YouTube page, but then it's also on the main Mosaic YouTube page. But eventually we will transition to solely a kids YouTube page. And one of the things, I think you highlighted this earlier, but every single week we ask people to subscribe. So that's just a common thing. We point them to our Facebook page, to our YouTube channel, and then to our Instagram page. So every single week. It gets repetitive after a while, but we're like throwing it at them every single week.
Now, have you already started asking them to subscribe to the new channel, even though you're kind of halfway there, like a foot in the door there?
So we have not specifically said. We were very intentional with our language. So one of the things you and I kind of talked about offline was, we want to make these videos relevant if you watch them now or a year from now. And so some of the things that we've tried to do is to just be really specific in how we communicate. So not necessarily drawing a ton of attention to the fact that we're in COVID right now. Like that people are going to be like, what's COVID? Well, not people right now, but eventually people may be like, oh yeah, that was that thing. So we've really tried to be intentional about like the language that we use, knowing that like, hey, this could be used for years to come. So yeah, we've been specific about that, but we have also been specific in the language we use for the YouTube page. So the YouTube channel, we say subscribe to our YouTube channel. So that really could be the Mosaic main page, or that can be our kids page. Yeah. Eventually it will say the Mosaic Kids YouTube channel. Yeah. But for now, we're just keeping it generic.
I'm going back here because the other thing I was thinking about is you do custom thumbnails.
We do.
Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like, and you can see on the right over here, you've got, like you did the picture, there's two guys back to back.
Yeah.
You're putting Mosaic Kids Elementary on the front end there. And you're doing the dates, which obviously, that's one of the things we've been talking about is at some point do we switch to like the Life app, because we use Orange Curriculum as well. And that's the name or something, so that 3 months from now, you know what it is if your kids wanted to watch it. But that's an important part of YouTube, right? Is doing all that. And then you do, let's see here, you put some of this, you put your links, your social links in the description, right? Is there anything else you've done with any of that?
Yeah. So one thing that we, I don't know how much this has been talked about, but one of the things that we talked about was trying to engage kids through the comments. But we learned very quickly, we probably shouldn't do that.
Yeah, they're trolls. Yes.
There are trolls out there, which is so unfortunate, but that is the reality of things. But not only that, a lot of people are watching us on a television. They're not actually watching us from a computer. Yeah. So we kind of felt like, okay, are we shooting ourselves in the foot by trying to engage people in the comments? So we just turned it off. It is on for the main broadcast. So for the main Mosaic account, comments are on. But for kids, we decided, hey, we're going to turn the comments off because they're not engaging with us in that way. The other thing that we found that was really interesting in how we, what information we put up for the YouTube channel is who is watching. So for some families, they watch it all together. Like there's mom, dad, brother, sister, everybody is in the room. They're all watching the broadcast at the same time. But for some people, they're putting it on for their kids to watch while they watch the adult service. So for us, we also had to think about, okay, if there is a 5th grader on here, their technical savvy is very different than like a kindergartner watching it. So we tried to put things, we tried to like be mindful of that, of like our parents watching, is it just kids watching? If it's just kids watching, how much information do we really want on this page versus, if parents want to go back and say like, what was that song that they were singing? That link is available to them in there.
Yeah. And you've designed, like everything goes to YouTube, even for your whole church. We were talking before this interview about how that's one of the advantages you had as a church, is that you were really driving content to YouTube before COVID hit. So I think you have almost 3,000 subscribers in a church that was averaging 1,800 maybe before, something like that. So you actually had a really good subscriber base, which then made it easy, right, to use that for kids. But everything's there, right? You're not creating a separate page. Are you emailing parents anything different with like resources or point over here to this page for that? Is it all just YouTube, right?
Yeah, as of right now, it's all just YouTube. The one thing that we do is we're trying to funnel everything to one location so that there's not a lot of confusion about, do I go for the parent queue, do I go here, for video, do I go here? So everything is really through our social media platforms, which include YouTube, but even everything on Instagram and on Facebook really points back to those videos there.
That's good. Any last thoughts? And I guess it'd be fun to check in down the road after you've kind of got that fully separate kids channel, see how that's going, building that up by itself. It's its own thing. But any other thoughts or ideas you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think one thing to keep in mind that I think's been helpful for me is our pastor has done a really good job, even before this, by saying everything is an experiment. So try new things and try different things. And some things are going to work great. And some things are going to crash and burn. And you never have to do those things again. But don't be afraid to try new things. And so we have really tried to take calculated risks during this time. And I'm not afraid, and my team is not afraid to say, hey, that worked really well. And so we're going to keep doing it, but then also killing things really soon if they don't seem to be working. So, yeah.
That's true. I just talked with somebody recently who was saying, in the time that we're recording this, where churches, some aren't gathering in person, some are, COVID has still got a lot of that shut down, and people are doing both things or just online. He was just saying how like now's the time that's better than any other to try stuff, because people are way more forgiving. I mean, so much is changing all the time. Yeah. That like they've got some people complaining about their adult services, how they're doing some things differently. But he said it's so few people. Most people, it's like, sure, whatever. Yeah. Everything else is changing. So, and online, I mean, if that's an online principle, if that's not an online principle, I don't know what it is. You just have to test. It's not like in person where we did it for years and decades and hundreds of years. And it looks a little different, or we add these elements. But it's largely the way the church has gathered for a long time. That's not online. Online does not, like, you got to test and do different things, and what worked for that person didn't work over here. And so that's a good thought. Everything's an experiment.
Yeah. And like you said, right now, I feel like people are a lot more forgiving of things. So it's like, if you try something and then it doesn't work, well, it's okay. Like you really don't ever have to do it again. And the beauty behind recording too is, you get a chance to like redo it.
Sure. Yeah.
But like when we're in person, it's like you got one shot to do this right. Yeah. And where this is like, oh no, if you like mess up a little bit, well, we can just cut and start all over again. It's not as big of a deal if things mess up, because we have the opportunity to correct before it ever goes live.
Yes. We have somebody preaching for the first time in this season when it's only online. And teaching the video, as you've learned, I'm sure, is very different than teaching in person. Yeah. So that's like its own separate skill. But there's that other advantage. It's like what I said. It's like you're going to preach, but it's going to get recorded. So you can literally stop and redo that part. Yeah. You know what I mean? And come back, and it'll get edited and spliced. And so there's that benefit too. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for all that you're doing, for the work you're doing. It's great being partners in the same city. And, I love your church, and you're just doing an awesome job there with the kids ministry and everything. So thanks for coming on and talking to us about what you're doing with kids content online.
Yeah, thanks. Anytime.